faithfulness and blocking. Like, he was always a great teammate. And when the ball was up in the air, he would give you the best chance to catch it. Like, the guy is so competitive. And at times you'd be like, dude, Diggs, calm down. But you love that as a teammate. Like, people forget that this is a barbaric, violent sport, and it's supposed to be played at a loud tone, and people are supposed to be crazy and upset and throwing things. Like, that's how this game is. So if it was the teammates that weren't like that I was like, what's wrong with that guy? Does he not want to be here today? Like, Diggs wants to play.
Someone I would say all of those things about. ESPN's Courtney Cronin joining me here. Purple Daily. That was Alex Boone from a few weeks ago.
Oh, I miss him.
On Stefon Diggs. I think we got to check in with Boone and see if he's doing all right. I mean, if he can't go to the gym, how is that man working out? I think we better find out. Courtney, I wanted to start the show with you just selfishly on something that I wrote, and then I have a lot of other things that we need to get to. The draft and your take on Tajay Sharp joining the Minnesota Vikings and what that means. I also wrote about some receivers that could step right in and whether that's a good idea for the Vikings to spend a high draft pick on a receiver. But I kind of had this moment the other day where I was thinking, gosh, we really moved on from Stefon Diggs not being here quickly. And part of that is that our world has been turned upside down. So everything seems sort of, not as important when we're talking about life and death situations going on outside of here. And Karl Anthony Towns' mother is in a very difficult condition with coronavirus and things like that. So, of course, a receiver being traded to another team in comparison is not a big deal. But I was thinking about, this is a guy that we saw as part of one of the biggest moments in franchise history. And he's in the conversation, at least, for one of the better receivers in franchise history. And he's gone. And we kind of went, oh, yeah, well, he wasn't happy. And so I did a deep dive, if people want to look for it at scorenorth.com, into why Stefon Diggs is no longer a Minnesota Viking. And the place that I started, Courtney, and I think that we still see the reflections of, is 2017 and that season and how it went. And everything that has happened since then, I think played a role in Diggs' unhappiness.
Sure. And I remember where you and I were talking about the article as you were forming, kind of connecting all of those dots and trying to piece this whole thing together. And even last week on the Tuesday show of Purple Daily, we tried to do the exact same thing, just talk this thing out. Like, what were the signs? Did we miss them? No, we obviously did not, because you and I, dating back to last May or whenever OTA started, and we're like, where's Diggs? This is not real. Right. This is not really voluntary, for as much as it has that notion, and obviously from the perspective of he was the only one not there, so it was clearly noticeable. But we've been talking about this for a while, and you couldn't miss the signs, but it was so much more than just last season. I think this had really been in play for a couple years now, and trying to see that the direction that this offense was trending in just did not jive with Stefon Diggs and where he was at in his career, and all of this stuff kind of domino affecting itself into where we're at right now. So if you think, oh, well, it happened last year because Kirk didn't throw him the ball and because Dalvin Cook was the focal point of this offense, and you're just kind of missing the whole story here, because beyond the 2019 season, this was trending this way for a while. And I really did like your article, because I think that it finally pieced everything together, where people who had either missed the signs or not understood just the full ramifications of what everything meant, they now finally get to, kind of read that in an encapsulated form.
Scorenorth.com, by the way, is where you can read it.
I heard that website's free.
Yes, free, totally free. You don't have to sign up or anything. You just click on it. There's also an app as well. Score North app. So make sure you get that. What I wanted to include in the piece is the idea of the diva receiver, and just sort of touch on it a little bit. I didn't go deep into this, but it frustrates me when we label people as anything. Lamar Jackson, running quarterback or something. Just labels are lazy, and they don't tell us much of the whole story. And if you call Stefon Diggs a diva, I mean, sure, I guess tweeting the way that he tweeted, or missing practice, or missing OTAs or something, it sort of fits the bill. And yelling at people on the sidelines, it fits what people have in their minds as a diva receiver. But I think what this is really a story of, Stefon Diggs not being here, is expectations that were set and then not met. And this works for just about anything in our life. So if you have expectations, Courtney, as you're going to be the Vikings reporter and you're going to be on ESPN Radio and on the Purple Daily Show, and those are your expectations for 2020. And then someone at ESPN says, actually, we're going to scale that back. And instead, you are just going to write newsers and put up 100-word articles based on NFL news. That's still a good job if you're the person that does that, but that's not the job that you wanted, and that doesn't maximize your skill. And I think that that's how Stefon Diggs looked at it as the 2018 season went along, and what happened at the end of the 2018 season with firing John DeFilippo, that early in that year, his skills are being maximized. They're throwing for 400 yards. The offense is lighting up the Los Angeles Rams in a loss, but he's putting up big numbers. Kirk's putting up big numbers, and they're throwing all the time. And then the head coach wants to go a different direction. So even if the head coach had good reason to go the different direction because of Dalvin Cook and you have a chance to have Gary here and everything else, that doesn't match up with what the expectations were for Stefon Diggs. And I think that that is a major part of why this went awry.
Yeah, and he was smart to project this thing out. I mean, he's 26 years old. Pretty soon he's going to be looking for the third contract, and you're not going to be getting the figures that you feel like you deserve if you don't have the numbers to back that. I mean, that just is a fact of the game, of the NFL contract world, and in players' value, and even in an era where he's certainly earning a good salary right now, it could still be at another level. When he looks around the league and sees guys that have done less than him, that are earning more than him, I'm sure that that's a point of contention. And one thing I know that you didn't touch on it, like to speculate rather about it in your article, was the contract situation.
Yeah.
But we know in hearing things behind the scenes that he wasn't exactly thrilled with his deal. And you can obviously infer Adam Thielen gets his big deal last April, right before Easter. And Diggs was at a far different, pay category or tax bracket, if you want to call it, in seeing where Adam Thielen, who had made 2 Pro Bowls in large part because look at what's over on the other side of the field, taking the attention away from you so you're able to perform at the level that you're performing at. I think that definitely played into the whole thing. And that's not to say that he didn't appreciate his teammate and wasn't happy for him, because he was one of the first people, if you remember on Twitter, that Friday that the extension got announced, Diggs was one of the first people to talk about happy for my brother, let's get it this year, et cetera, et cetera. But he, rationally, he was smart about it. He looked at his own situation. I know people are going to say, oh, he's a diva, he's not a team player. Sorry, this is a dog-eat-dog league and dog-eat-dog world. You have to watch out for yourself, because if you don't, no one else is going to. So I can understand the frustrations of not being in an offense that allows you to tap into the full depth of your potential. And I don't think he ever felt that, especially the last 2 years after the offense took a turn, in a major left turn, to a completely different direction from where they were at the first 13 or so games of 2018, where he was able to reach his potential. And on the other side of that, Matthew, I look at this and say, well, what if Dalvin Cook took the same approach? I mean, that's the argument that, since we've laid this forth the way that we have, people are going to say, well, Diggs felt that way about himself and his skill set and everything else. Well, what if another player took the same approach? And some people are going to say it's selfish. Well, that's their prerogative, and Dalvin Cook's eventually going to get that second contract. Will it be the level of what Diggs could potentially earn could have earned, in a bigger second contract, or even on his third? Probably not, because of the value of running backs. That's just the nature of where we're at right now in the NFL. But I do think that he had a point, and he exercised his point, because that's what you're allowed to do if you're a star player. And the situation now is that he's just not here. He's moved on, and going beyond this, I wonder, will we potentially see more of this stuff happening in the NFL in this landscape?
Yeah, and I think we already are. Plus, there's the NBA mindset of wanting to find your way to play for who you want to play for, and in situations that you want to be in,
and not wasting your prime. Sorry,
Right.
that's the point here. Diggs is at least knowledgeable and has the heads upness, if that's even a phrase, to know I'm not going to be able to do this forever.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to, receiver is not a position you can play forever and ever. And I mean, obviously running back's even less, and there are other positions that have a shorter span, but he's already eclipsed the league average of about 2.5 to 3 years, where most careers end up dying. So he knows that he wants to maximize the rest of the years that he has left, because you're not immune to injuries. You're not immune to a lot of things that could shorten your playing time. And rightfully so, he took that into his own hands. Now, I think the way in which he did is going to irk people for a long time to come, and people are going to say he was ungrateful and that he was a distraction and all these other things. We know behind the scenes some of that stuff is true, some of it's not, and a lot of it's just the way that you perceive it.
No, and that's a great point, is that, this is a situation that just became untenable. And I wouldn't, and I didn't in the article point and say this is Mike Zimmer's fault or this is Stefon Diggs' fault. This is why it didn't work. And this is why, not necessarily exactly Zimmer, but the philosophy and the offense and the situation just became a point of conflict. And with the contract point, I wanted to focus more on him wanting to prove that he was a top wide receiver. And that goes along with the contract point. No one ever specifically said to me, this is all about the contract. So while it is relevant, it also kind of goes along with Adam Thielen has 2 Pro Bowls. Stefon Diggs doesn't have any. And even though, we kind of laugh at the Pro Bowl and some of the people they put in, Xavier Rhodes last year. What?
Replacement players.
Right. Yeah, sometimes they do that. But it matters. It matters to your contract negotiation. It matters when you're done with your career and they go back and look and how many times did you make the Pro Bowl and things like that, that he believes, rightfully so, by any of the metrics you look at, whether it's contested catches, quarterback rating when you throw his way, or if you talk to people in the game who could break down receivers, he is one of the top players in the league at that position, and his numbers haven't exactly reflected it. But also there's another point of it too, and they've been good. I mean, he's got 3 straight 1,000-yard reception seasons, but I think that he wants to be considered in that, DeAndre Hopkins air because he believes he's that talented. But I think the other part of this too, Courtney, is that he also did not see this team necessarily as one that could fulfill what they set out to do after 2017, which was to win the Super Bowl. And one thing we know about Diggs, that after his meltdown after Chicago, is he had 7 catches for 108 yards that day. Like, he put up good numbers that day and was apoplectic about how things had gone. So it's not all about the me. It's not all about the numbers. It's also about winning. And when you come off a 2018 season that is a massive disappointment, where you have to fire your offensive coordinator, your quarterback that you paid $84 million won't throw you a 50-50 ball, and then you go into a year where the quarterback is trying to be protected by the head coach and focus everything around a running back, and once again, you come up short of what your goal was set out to be. We may have set the bar at 10-6 for this team and said, oh, well, they had a pretty good season at 10-6. But the guys inside that locker room that were on the 2017 team did not set the bar at 10-6 and finishing with 1 playoff win. And I think that also drove Diggs crazy. And when you see him frustrated on the sideline, when you see him yelling on the sideline, a lot of times it turned out that was him trying to push everybody to win because he thought the team was capable of it and they didn't come through with it. And of course, you can't just say, trade me, get out of here because we didn't win, get me out of here because we didn't win as much as I wanted us to. That's not the way every player can handle it, but someone of his talent level that has a lot of teams interested around the league can, I think, show a different level of frustration and look for a change.
You bring up a very good point there that is worth repeating. Not everybody can do this. Not everybody can act that certain way. Not everybody has the same sort of clout that he built up over the last few seasons as one of the better receivers in the league. And you can even put him in that category as one of the best right now. Here's the thing that I think about when I look at the Stefon Diggs situation and some of the meltdowns. I mean, call them what they were. They were temper tantrums on the sideline. I mean, that is what you would call something if a child is kicking and screaming and throwing stuff. Same thing for a 26-year-old. Now, is it the right way to handle it? That's up to you to decide. But he was always a competitor through all of that. And you could see the frustrations boiling over and the stuff that you didn't always see because some of the antics took the center stage was him pleading with Kirk Cousins in that Week 17 game against the Bears. Give me a chance. Throw the ball to me. I've got you. Like that type of stuff. I relate this to watching Odell Beckham having meltdowns last year. And you know what he did after he got his 1,000 yards at the end of last season? He took himself out of the game. Tell me that's not selfish as all get out.
Very
Stefon
different.
Diggs never did that.
Very different.
Those two consistently get put together just because the actions look similar on the sidelines. But I promise you, sweetheart, the motivations behind both of those vastly different. So you can complain about Stefon Diggs all you want. You can complain about, it's a distraction, it's a locker room cancer, whatever the hell you want to call it. His motivations were far different than someone like Odell Beckham, who is out there shooting commercial after commercial, being a true diva in every sense of the word. To take yourself out of a game. Yes, I understand you play for the Cleveland Browns, but they did have a little bit of an uptick last season, and they made a push there at the end. Was it promising? Not really, but it was a push nonetheless. And to take yourself out of the game, how can you call yourself a leader of that team? Like, Stefon Diggs, through and through all this, was still a leader of the team. Yes, he didn't show up to OTAs, but he was one of the most vocal guys in that locker room, one of the most well-respected guys in that locker room. You and I are in there all the time.
Yep.
Seeing on Friday who flocks to whose locker to have lunch, that is a sure indicator of somebody who isn't a loner, isn't an outcast, isn't alienating himself from everybody else. He was well-liked and loved by a lot of guys in that locker room, and that's going to be a loss for them.
Well, and the thing that the players respect most, and this goes for around the league with Stefon Diggs, is if you can ball. And for somebody who puts that much into his technique and who competes at that sort of level, we've been around a lot of players who are not in his stratosphere of those things. And so I think that's, the respect comes from, even if he is upsetting you with yelling at you on the sideline or whatever else, you have to respect what he's able to do in the league. And that's why we started the segment with what Alex Boone said. And I quoted it in the piece of just, I thought it was the perfect encapsulation that, football players are going to respect the game and how you play it. And I think Diggs had the ultimate respect there from his teammates. And by the way, even though he was fined for skipping practice, they still wanted him to play that following Sunday. So keep that in mind. So anyway, I hope people read the article, scorenorth.com. What did I title it? Something about what happened between the Vikings and Stefon Diggs.
It's a play-by-play of the last year and a half, 2 years.
It's just sort of the accumulation and the build up to them.